eye movement. Rapid eye movement.
Welcome to Progress in San Diego, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. I'm your host, Walter Davis. And with me once again, I have Mr. Rick Ireton. And Rick is one of our new producers that's going to be starting his show called Let's Talk About Love. And welcome to the show again, Rick.
Thanks, Walter.
It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Good to be here.
Now, Rick, we've been having a discussion about love in our community. Is that something that you hear people talk about very often?
No, it's kind of a funny topic. You know, people are kind of afraid of the topic of love because it means so much to so many people, and it's real buttony for some people. Some people have been hurt, and some people abuse the word love, comparing it with sex, and so it's not a word that's a topic that people discuss much, but it's really important.
One of the things that I've been noticing is that that Beatles song came on during that the event program that we had on 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
And they were singing that song, All We Need Is Love.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when I was younger and that came on, I thought they were talking about sex. That's what my focus was. But the reality is, love has really been the solution to many of our problems. And it is the solution to our problems. What happened after World War II, right? We rebuilt the Japanese economy. We rebuilt Germany after a war, right?
Yeah.
After the Civil War, what happened? People in the North embraced people in the South, and we were able to heal some wounds through loving actions, right? Isn't that something that we need to be looking at? So what kind of loving actions, maybe, is what we can be thinking about to heal some of the things that we have going on in today's world? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would hope we wouldn't have to go through so much suffering as those guys went through, because it was really horrendous. It's terrible. And a lot of it's like learning a lesson, and you can, learn how to hold a nail and learn it properly, and you don't have to hit your thumb with a hammer or something. And so the idea is, if we can point our intentions on the right idea, which is love and brotherhood, and make that the foundation that we build our world on, we wind up with a much happier world. And ultimately, it's about trying to find a measure of happiness here.
So with that, if you can bear with me, let's kind of talk about, let me just sort of name some of the things, right, that are not loving actions. And perhaps you can come back and expound more on what some loving actions could be.
Sure.
Now, before we do that, though, I'd like to diverge over here to your chakra key.
Yeah.
Could you just briefly go through each one of those categories and explain to the audience what that's about?
Well, first off, I just want to explain, in my research of love, I discovered the menorah and studying Hindu thought about chakras. And when you turn the Jewish menorah 90 degrees and you align it up with your chakras, the menorah provides us with a real interesting and telling map that I believe is a hierarchy that we can use to take the idea of nature, and we'll get more into this, but basically we can come up with a hierarchy of thought. Like the root chakra is associated with our drive for survival, and we all want to survive. We all want the air, food, and water, of course. And sacral chakra is related to our sex drive and to pleasure versus pain, and solar plexus relates to our power, and we all need a measure of power. The heart chakra is the big chakra here, and that relates to love. That's our center. And our throat chakra up here relates to communication. Brow chakra relates to thought or mind. And the crown chakra relates to our connection with God, the divine.
Or our spirit.
Or our spirit. But what the menorah does, it's so interesting, it shows how our crown and root chakra are connected. And that idea is so profound because it tells us that we never get away with anything. I mean, God knows. We know about everything. There are no secrets. And so sex chakra, sacral chakra here, it shows how it's connected through our heart chakra to our brow, which is our mind. And that's why our relationships and sex, it's so very mental. When you're happy with somebody, you can join in with someone. Solar plexus right here. This is so interesting. It points how our solar plexus is right here, and this goes to our throat. And so our drive for power, which is right in here, really is manifest in our voice. But the thing that's so telling here is that everything comes from the heart. And we'll talk about the other one, but the other drawing shows us in a bigger way. And this gives us a tool we can use as humanity, as brothers, to give value to things. Like, this is really, like, as brothers, it's important that we're all healthy, that we have insurance, that we have an understanding of sex, that we have an understanding of power, but that ultimately we want to raise everyone so we're living up here in this heart and our throat chakra, so that we're living out of love. We're living in creativeness and in singing and playing. And in essence, we are made as a song and dance show. I mean, we're meant here to love one another and have a good time and sing and play the music and guitars.
Okay, so right now,
Yeah.
right, in today's world, people are perhaps more focused now on the root chakra because people's basic needs are not being met.
Yeah,
We have middle-class people that are going through garbage cans now.
yeah,
We have people who do not have access to adequate medical care.
yeah,
We have people who don't have enough food, who don't have shelter.
Yeah.
Look at the foreclosures. People are losing
Yeah.
their homes, so
Yeah.
their basic needs
Yeah.
are not being satisfied.
yeah,
So we have this Occupy movement now
Yeah.
that's starting to take root throughout the world,
Right.
in fact. So the other part that you mentioned was solar plexus being
power, drive for power.
So we have a very small amount of people that are controlling most of the power in this world. They're controlling most of the money, and they're hoarding the money,
Yeah.
and thus people are not able to get jobs. They don't have jobs. We have both the father and the mother working, and it's not enough.
Yeah,
Now, most of us raise our children with love. We don't have a condition on that necessarily. We
Sure.
don't charge them money,
right,
but yet we inject them out into this world where if you don't have enough money, you're not going to get medical treatment.
right,
If you don't have enough money, you are not going to be able to get fair treatment within the legal system, because the legal system depends upon how much money you have, not about what justice is all about.
yeah,
So we are also talking about war.
yeah,
So this country gets what it wants. The wealthy people in this country get what they want. They want the most powerful military in the world. What do we have? We have the most powerful military in the world.
Yeah.
But what about education? We're going towards the bottom
Yeah.
in education.
Yeah.
What about our infrastructure? We're going towards the bottom, infrastructure.
Yeah.
What about our healthcare system? We're toward the bottom of the developing world in terms of our healthcare structure. So it appears that based upon your explanation and what's happening in the everyday world, we're on the wrong track. We're not focused on love. We're focused on profit and greed and power.
yeah, yeah. And the problem with that is that you get going as a country, and you get into, in our evolution, it's a natural part to have to battle. I mean, we're in there fisticuffs as we evolve, and so we've developed this beautiful industrial I'm sorry, my thought.
Complex or
Industrial complex.
industrial
military complex.
society.
Exactly. And so there are all these businesses making money. And so say I have a business making ammunition. I want to sell lots of bullets, and I want to evolve that idea. And
Right.
And pretty soon I've got somebody in there representing me in Congress, and we wind up with a world that's based on bad ideas about somebody has a business selling bombs or selling something, and they want to sell more of them. And so there's a hierarchy of ideas that we as community are faced with. And some of the ideas are good ideas, and some of them are bad. And these bad ideas we have to not support with our money and with our thoughts and our efforts. And that's something that we need to come to the table and look at these things and say, is this a good investment to spend half of all we make on our military? And what does that return us?
Destruction.
Yeah, it's bad
War,
energy. It's a
death.
bad investment. It's like, it's like we're climbing out of the dark ages and we're still faced with this idiocy in a way.
So who is that good for? Who really benefits from this war stuff?
the guys that are in the business. You know, and then there's some others with egos. To me, when you look at the idea of our purpose, of who we are, we're spiritual beings. All of us, everybody here, everybody at the party, we're all spiritual beings. We're here for a reason. And I like to think of the idea of Earth School, that we're here as students and teachers, and we're all here to figure it out, you know. And anything we do, when I'm good to you, you'll be good to me. And it's like the idea of the golden rule is the rule. And it's fairly simple. We don't have to conquer the world. What do you do with it? The only thing that can conquer the world that makes sense would be the idea of love, that we would all build families together, that we would work for each other and stuff.
So let's explore that. Let's take a look at what might be some of the bad ideas that we have. You mentioned there that some of the ideas are bad and some of them may be good. So if we look at, let's just say, prison, our way of putting people in prison, we're locking people up in prison for plants. If you have a marijuana plant, you're going to go to prison. If you got cocaine, you go to prison. And so it appears to me that that's very barbaric. What about providing treatment as opposed to incarceration? Do you think that that would be something, or a better idea, or a more loving idea, or a more how would I say, civilized way of dealing with addiction, as opposed to locking people up or locking people up for mental health issues? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that for every crime, or for every, again, we're here as students, and so again, if we're looking at one another as students and teachers, we look at one another differently, and we look at the issue differently. And if somebody has a compulsive, they're on crack or something, and they're completely addicted to this stuff, they clearly need help. In another way than somebody would be, say that you have a few too many drinks, and you're out and you get in an accident and you kill somebody. It's a terrible thing. But the remedy for that wouldn't be putting you in jail for 10 years necessarily. The remedy that would make sense would be to see what's going on with you. Love weighs all things, and then perhaps you'd have a chance to help the family of who you killed, or there'd be some loving remedy. But the idea that we might explore things that are going on in everybody's life and look at it from a perspective of love and get out of this business of revenge. And if you do something, I'm putting you in a cage. I mean, this caging is so mean, and what benefit is it? And ultimately, all this stuff is bad investments. It costs money. And again, you have a guy there's so many people in jail that are so wonderful, that could be so productive and such lights, because we're all lights. And ultimately, we want to help everybody rise through these areas, to figure their lessons out, to learn about the right and the wrong, and the good and bad, and to move into goodness. And
so we're down to 15 minutes, so we got a lot to cover.
Okay.
So let's just explore that real quick. Is locking people up in prison working? I mean, our crime levels are not dropping to an extent that appears to be a good investment. And in fact, it's going up in many levels. In fact, we have more U.S. citizens being killed in the streets of Chicago than we are getting killed in the Afghanistan and Iraq war put together. So some of the streets in American cities are more dangerous than war zones. So it does not appear to be working in that context. In addition, how much money is that costing? An average of $50,000 per prisoner. And America has more people incarcerated than any other country in the world. We have more than almost 1.2 million people incarcerated in this country. That means 1 out of every 99 Americans is incarcerated. And that's more than Syria, that's more than China, that's more than Russia. And so freedom doesn't appear to be ringing for a large segment of the population, and that's disproportionate to African Americans and Latinos in terms of the numbers that are in prison. Now, let's look at something else that's being fed by that. The concrete industry is making money off of building prisons. The arms manufacturers that make the bullets and the guns for the jailers. Now, how about the legal profession? Now, I checked the Harvard Law School program on the legal profession. Did you realize there are 1.1 million attorneys in the United States now.
Yeah.
And that number has increased since 1970 exponentially by 35%. And so what happened in the 1970s? We had the minimum sentencing guidelines,
Yeah.
the drug sentencing guidelines, the Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3 drug system,
Yeah.
where people are getting more time in prison for having marijuana than cocaine, for example. The attorneys, the legal profession is a $200 billion business. Now, to get a concept of that, if you have $1 billion the day that Christopher Columbus came to America in 1492, and you spent $1,000 per day since 1492, you would still be a billionaire because you couldn't spend the interest at that rate.
Yeah.
That's how much $1 billion. Now, they're making $200 billion every year in the legal profession. So the lawyers don't have any kind of incentive to have logical laws put on the book.
Yeah.
Our congressmen, a lot of them are ex-attorneys, and a lot of them are influenced by what? Concrete industry paying them, legal profession.
Yeah.
So they don't have any incentive in developing laws that are germane to having a just society. So we have people in prison now that haven't committed any crimes. We have people in prison now that didn't have enough money to pay for adequate legal assistance.
Yeah.
So looking at that from that context, let's look at divorce, and I want you to talk more. Let's look at divorce.
Okay.
How many people have said that they didn't get a fair shake in family court? So if we have a legal system that can't deal with family court fairly, how are we going to depend on that same legal system to execute people? How are we going to depend on that same legal system to put people away in prison for the rest of their lives? What if we had elders that sat in a council and handled the divorce cases? Would that be a higher level of thinking in terms of the way that you're saying good ideas and bad ideas?
Absolutely, and we have to go there. But going back a little bit, and this goes back to what great capitalists we are. I mean, the idea that if you put me to work and I want you to build a jail, Rick, man, I'll fill that thing up somehow. And that's what we've done. We've made it a capitalistic business. So we have this whole industry of caging some people if this thing happens or that thing happens. And everybody does such a good job at it, and they found a way to, through fear and other bad ideas, to take over our country. And that's the idea, that there's some bad ideas, and that's a huge bad idea that have taken off, that are taking over, that we have to say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. So we have to go back to love and reevaluate this stuff, Walter, like you're saying. You know, we've got to, you know, ultimately, again, it's the attitude of who are we and what the heck's going on here. And we're all figuring it out. We have to have a greater measure of compassion to love one another and to, you know, take time to do what we have to do to make it right.
So one of the big areas that we just talked about was prison reform. We've already hit on healthcare reform.
Sure.
Every person needs to have healthcare.
Yeah.
Okay, it used to be a time that people had to pay fire departments to put the fire out at their houses.
Right.
And the firemen would arrive at the scene and fight each other. That's why they were called engine companies, because they were separate companies.
Yeah, I see.
And these firemen would fight each other while their houses burned down until they realized that should be a government function.
Right.
That we should have a police force, what if you didn't pay your police force bill?
Right.
And now you need the police. Okay, well now the police aren't going to come.
Right.
But you didn't pay your bill.
Yeah.
What if we had a thing where firemen, you didn't pay your fireman bill, so they're not going to come put a fire out.
Right.
So in the same context, you need medical treatment, but you didn't pay for your medical insurance,
Right.
so we're not going to give you medical treatment.
Right.
It's barbaric.
It's barbaric. It is. And it's the same thing goes back to this, that shows that we're here, we're at the party, and our objective as brothers is to elevate everybody. And that involves food and water and our basic stuff we need. And if we need medical insurance, we're going to take care of it. Because we want to see you up here. We want to give you a good education. And if you're a great dancer, we're going to encourage you. We're going to build places so you can dance. And it's this idea of loving one another as our primary motive. This is our business. We're here to be as brothers and to love one another and encourage one another and to help one another.
Most definitely. And so, okay, let's look at education. Now we slip behind education.
Yeah.
How
Most
can we
important
be
thing.
an advanced society if we're not investing money into our future? We're not investing money into our infrastructure. We got bridges falling down, killing
Right.
people. We have kids that are falling behind in education. We
Right.
don't have scientists. We're not turning out scientists in an adequate number.
Yeah.
So we have these young people, brilliant, like we got some brilliant young people working behind the cameras here right now
Yeah,
who are underemployed right now.
absolutely.
Some of these young people working in 7-Eleven, some of the ones
Yeah.
that don't have jobs are probably bright enough to have the cure for cancer.
Yeah,
But because they didn't have enough money to go to the right college or be in the right education system, their talent for developing things that would benefit us as a whole is not going to come out because of profit, and they're in a 7-Eleven working right now.
yeah. That's really,
It's
really-
barbaric.
It's barbaric, it's criminal, it's just, it's part of our evolution. I think even you and I have to have compassion looking at our condition and saying, this is really pathetic. And we have to, ultimately, if you're watching this, we all have to think in a higher terms. Because Walter, our work is our love, ultimately. Life is about love. Love is about giving. Giving is about our work. Work is our artistry. This is the area that we have to, this is our reason for work is the work. It's not to make a profit. It's to make this creation. It's to be an expression. For Walter, for you to shine. For the woodsman to make his piece of craft. It's all about that. It's not about the money. The money's part of it, but it's not about the money. When I buy your stuff, I love you. When you buy my stuff, it's your love to me. When we buy from each other, it's a flow of giving and receiving, and our love grows. And this is what it's about. We have to have things to do for one another that we might love each other more.
So for you, and from what I can see, the focus needs to be on love. And so that thing
It's
that
love.
came out, the Beatles song, All We
Yeah.
Need Is Love,
They had it right.
they had it right.
Yeah.
And so we're now focused on this power-grabbing, greed, money.
Murder.
And we have American people in the street now. We have Occupy movements in the street right now. People
Yeah,
are
which
tired.
is awesome.
Their backs are against the wall.
Yeah.
We have $4 a gallon gas now.
Yeah.
I saw strawberries in the grocery store, a bag of frozen strawberries at $11.
Yeah.
A garlic salt, $6.
Yeah.
How can people live? People are certainly not having the elements of their root chakra satisfied. And we have the solar plexus, the greed,
Yeah.
the power stuff going on.
Creating the scarcity.
because- Creating scarcity and poverty,
Yeah.
well, correction. Value is caused by scarcity.
Yeah.
So diamonds are valuable because they're scarce.
Right.
Gold is valuable because it's scarce.
Right.
So home loans are scarce and jobs are scarce. Now we have employers that will not hire people because they're unemployed. What kind of sense does that make? You don't have a job, so we're not going to give you a job.
Yeah, I know. There's really problems with the idea of capitalism. I mean, the idea of giving and receiving and work and money in itself is not a bad thing. But when you know you're a good capitalist and I've got this stuff and I'm not going to give it, I'm going to create a scarcity to make its value go up. We've got this condition right now with our medicine, where these guys that have these patents on this medicine and that people depend on it or they die, and they're holding these people hostage out of scarcity to make the value go up, which is criminal. So there's a lot of things that can happen. As we as society, we have to say, well, we know that you might want to do that, but you can't do that, or we'll take those rights away from you. I mean, again, there's a lot of ideas that people have floating around, and they might have some money to try to sell it, but ultimately we have to have a measure of reason that says, well, I realize you want to do that, but we're not going to let you do that. Or there's a price to pay for it. You can't be involved with that, or there's some other price involved.
So breast cancer treatment costing $8,000 per day.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Radiation treatment costing $700 per day.
Yeah.
We're down to our last 3 minutes on this show.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that you can close with some things. You have 1 minute, and then we're going to have to have our closing.
Okay. Want me to right now?
1 minute, yeah.
Okay.
To say what you need to say to the audience.
Well, of course, everything begins with us, okay? And the first thing that we should do, of course, is to look at ourselves and realize who we are. We're spiritual beings. We're loving, divine people. And we need to love. We need to love ourselves and to hold our presence, and then to recognize that, hey, I'm only going to be involved in loving activity. I'm going to manage my energy because I'm a loving person, and I know that what I put out comes back. When I'm mad and angry, and anger comes back at me, and I'm also intelligent, so I know that where my attention goes, my energy flows. And if I love to paint paintings, I'm going to paint more because my inspiration is there. And so I'm going to do what inspires me, and I'm going to be loving, and I'm not going to support ideas that are bad ideas. And keep in mind that what this shows us, that our voice is our power, right? And so we are all very powerful. And I would encourage everybody to take on their power and call your congressman and to do what you're compelled to do in love, to make your thoughts known and to say, listen, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to stand for this. I want to make a loving world. I'm bigger than that. We're all bigger than this. And then love grows from there.
Well, this has been great once again. We're going to have to get ready to close here. Time
Okay,
just zipped
sure.
by once again. I want to encourage the audience to look at higher ways of thinking, to think outside of the box. The person that invented the car was thinking out of the box. The person that invented the airplane or jet aircraft were thinking outside of the box. We need to go to a higher level of living and appreciating one another. I want to encourage you to look at our other videos on YouTube, and I want to encourage you to watch the rest of our shows that come on Sunday, Wednesday, and Thursday with the Community Coalition. Look at the website that comes up at the end of the broadcast. And if you want to get involved in terms of being a volunteer on our show or becoming part of our studio audience, please feel free to do so. I want to thank you once again for joining Progress in San Diego. I'm your host, Walter Davis, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Walter.
Could love drive you to fly? Could hope be the only way? And would it be a crazy question? Would you take it all and throw it all away? Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. And the world will break apart today. Could freedom be between the lines? And joy a life foundation springing up to find that every thought will lead to nothing, no matter how hard you try to define. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. I open my arms to the end of time. I got one hand on a mummy and the other on a green tree, orange-eyed gecko. I got one foot on a street in the village and the other in a mine under Colorado sunshine. Under Colorado sunshine. Could you stand in the way of progress? Could you laugh it off and say, I'd let it all fall down and let the rhymes come. I'd waste away and let the roots grow around some. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart